I think like a lot of people get that mixed up with.
Can they come in now?
Yeah, there's agendas on the table.
Well, we're out on this right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started. We're unmuted. Hi, this is Janelle, and I'm with the county, and I'm in for Arnold, who can't be here. She had some conflict. Cass, do you want to go ahead and do roll call? Yes. Okay. Andy Bydowski? And Gotcha? Here. Katie O'Neill?
Yes.
Chantel Simone Pietre? Corinne Powell? Courtney Bailey? Dale Potter, Ellen Drell, Rita Brad, Gavin McDonough, Janine Coleman, Anna Nelson, present, Jim Percacci, here, Juman, present, Julie Carrera, yes, Ken Byers, Kashi, Marva Ben, here, Matthew Delker.
Here.
Monique Ramirez. Here. Patrick Sellers. Paul Hansberry. Edwards. Lucas. Pittman. Ralph. Diane Curry. Here. Nash Gonzalez left. Mary Lynn Hunt. Here. Strickland. Duquette, here. Matt Drowski.
Hello.
Anyone in the room who I didn't get?
Paul Hansberry just arrived.
Hi, Paul. Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. We'll go to the second topic, which is a review of the top
state and local issues from the poll. So if we want, we'll start with the state issues, and I'll just kind of go through them and then open it up for discussion. So that's microbusiness, multiple premises, derails for cultivators, remove 4-acre caps from associations, support local sales through expanded venue allowances for cannabis events, A&M designation issues for small farmers.
I also wanted to, if we could insert a brief conversation about the February 6th deadline to comment to the subcommittees of the State Commission. I think that that is a timely topic that we should discuss, and I don't mean to derail things, but I just wanted to cover that.
If everybody's in agreement, I'm good with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want to take that in any particular, do you want to start with that?
I think so.
Let's just start, because it seems like that's kind of a hot topic. Let's go ahead and start with that.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the State Commission that advises the regulators on the regulations, and particularly in crafting what will eventually be proposed as non-emergency regulations, have broken up into 10 different subcommittees, and unfortunately we were only given 1 week's notice. I think it was yesterday or the day before, an email went out saying that we have until February 6th to submit comments to each of those subcommittees, because the subcommittees are meeting in Sacramento on the 13th. So I wanted to raise that as a potential point of action for this group, and implore us to do what we can to raise some of our issues. Some of our issues are already being raised in other contexts, but I really think that it might be helpful to direct some action in that way. And unfortunately, it may go beyond just our top five issues, because I think that this is our first shot at being able to tell the city who advises the regulators all of our local concerns regarding it. And so while we've worked hard to narrow our issues, I think for this little blast, we're going to have to open ourselves up beyond these 5 issues. It won't be our only bite of the apple, but it's a very important bite of the apple to start framing the discussion.
Thanks. I'd like to add that Janine, sorry. The Cannabis Advisory Committee that's meeting on this week for these recommendations is also meeting on March 1st. So we'll have a second opportunity to submit recommendations 1 week prior to March 1st in respect to the work that we're doing and being able to also dialogue with the Board of Supervisors about our recommendations, like we did for the emergency recommendation, the emergency regulation. So just some considerations around timelines and how we can craft our work to take advantage of that opportunity to the Board of Supervisors support 3 recommendations. We'll probably miss the first deadline because we have a week, but we can probably have a second deadline in respect to Board of Supervisors meeting.
We can also recycle some of those that are originally in the letter for public comment in December, because some of those things are still present and they're not resolved. So I think we can hit some of these based on board meetings and what they directed previously for comments, so we can at least aim February 6th to get some of them, and maybe a more fully comprehensive one for March 1st.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can also go to Sacramento on the 13th to verbally express our concerns as well. And I'd like to ask you that individuals can submit their recommendations. There's a survey that the Bureau put out, and so that's another way that individuals and other organizations can submit recommendations.
No, I have a crazy idea.
Okay.
No, you tell me if it's real crazy. Do you guys have a proposal for putting together a letter before the 6th that you want sponsorship done?
Absolutely.
Because we do have a standing item for legislative action at the board that the executive office can talk about legislation and get direction to submit a letter. So we do have a chance because it's a standing board item. And so if that's something you want to, we can talk with Carmel. Typically, we don't always have, it's always agendized, but we don't always have, things on it. So if we want to go that route, maybe we put together the team now that wants to work as a subgroup to putting together that letter.
The letter needs to be done, the meeting is Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So we can do it over the weekend.
Yeah.
do it,
Right.
you're pushing the envelope because our board's gonna need to have it in their hands. I won't, I'm gonna say, if they can get it in their hands Monday morning, I'm gonna scrap it.
Done and done.
To read it before they get it.
Done and done.
No, we did it before. We did it before, yeah.
Call that team.
And so if that board meeting is Tuesday the 5th, the 6th, which is the day.
All day, right? We do not till midnight. I like to comment really before.
It's a great idea, we like these challenges.
We love that. No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But we like it. We like the creative thought. Thank you.
Okay, so any all volunteers for the subgroup? Downcast?
No.
Raise your hand high, guys. Raise your hand.
I just, we're gonna say the same thing. Not functional.
Narrow your team down.
Yeah.
Like 3.
Thank you. 3 or, yeah.
Team of 3. Hannah, Jude, and myself before, I had to exit out for personal reasons the last time, and a lot of what I said got exited out of what was said. But I want to remain on that committee. It's important that people that otherwise have a voice have a voice. I heard that, and I also served on the last committee.
Yeah. The last one, since the one that we were on with you, was Janine, Hannah, Casey, and I. We were able to get something in by 5 o'clock on Monday. This time we'll get it in by Sunday.
That was the one that we didn't have with the big group, right?
Yeah, right. So anyway.
I'm happy to step out and be
Likewise. No,
an ancillary backup.
I'm happy.
So,
It's so much.
it says, I'm available by email and phone if there's a
Do we
question.
want to bring in Janine?
I'm happy.
We're throwing you back in?
Yeah.
Janine, Jude, how are you guys?
Kitty, Julia, and Hannah is our,
Not getting off that easy.
no, you're not.
We're still gonna rely you because
You're
we're
on the
only
bench.
legal counsel.
That's right.
Right, so
You're on the bench.
Janine, Julia, Jude, and Casey.
Yes.
Yes, it'll work.
Do it.
We'll make it work.
Game on, Pete.
Hannah will be an advisor.
Great, Hannah, thank you.
I leaned on.
Okay. So we have a little subgroup. So I'm assuming all these 5 issues are going to be in there, but probably more. That's what I'm hearing.
I really appreciate your mentioning that a lot of the original issues that we submitted can be recycled. There's some refinement because there's been some instances, but I think that that's very smart to.
So who's going to lead the group on the first email and pull those old things?
I mean, I can. Well, I still have the original that you sent me, that's the group list, and then what ultimately made the board.
Right.
Because there was kind of a disconnect timing. So I can, Cass can send those out, I'll give those to you, Cass. Okay.
Can you send them to everybody?
Sure.
We have comments.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is essentially one of the initial tasks. Exactly. And
What happened?
Comments.
Right. What happened before, Corinne, was that we didn't have a list of the larger groups, and now we're gonna have a list of this.
Is this the group, is this one okay that everyone should have?
Everybody okay?
Yeah, we're
Okay, so that's always more effective to be able to share it, even if you don't want to participate, you don't have to, but that way everybody's on the same page.
Excellent.
Okay. Feel good on that.
Wait, you're not used to that? Okay, we're good? Good.
We're good?
We're good.
Okay, let's just go through them topic by topic, so that would be micro-business, multi-premises.
Yes.
Yes.
And zoning still, is that resolved?
That's on local.
That's local, that's not state. We're first dealing with state issues up here. Gotcha. Yeah, I think that the issue is very narrow, with respect to requesting the state to remove the restrictions of having micro-businesses be located all on the same premises. And I think that's the primary topic for the state level issue. There are probably additional ones, such as I have a email that I sent to the state. I actually had 2 separate communications in the past 10 days of letters that I sent to the state. One of them was to CDFA, and it was encapsulating an hour-and-a-half conversation that I had with their branch chief as well as legal counsel, and I will forward my notes from that to Cass so she could send it out to everybody.
The 2 that you sent out? I'll send them.
And then the additional submission that I made recently to BCC and specifically Lori Ajax, but all the rest of the staff as well. One of the topics dealt with micro-business, the other had to do with A&M, but with respect to micro-business, I specifically asked if they would interpret the distributor transport license as a qualifying distribution activity for purposes of the 3 of the 4 activities.
I also sent my contact to Zafir, but I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
But I as well sent that up the chain.
Cool. So that's just the only specific related to the micro-business issue that I have on this show.
My understanding was that they already were accepting the small D distribution transport only as a part of the microbusiness, because when I submitted my application for a microbusiness, knowing it was going to be rejected because I didn't have the county permit yet, but I just did it to see. They contacted me back and said that the only problem was that all of the way that I had filled it in with distribution transport only in parentheses was fine, and we were just waiting for the county. That was it. So I don't know.
And somebody else who claimed they got rejected for that reason, but I'm not convinced that that was the reason.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's like a bunch of people reviewing it, so
Yeah.
making a different answer. It's a different problem. But they're all very nice.
Anybody else on micro-business issues at the state level? Local level, not zoning.
How about then direct sales for cultivators?
So important,
Biggie.
so important.
And the board put that in last letter and supported direct sales for cultivators and also greater expanded allowances at events.
Yeah.
So removing the 4-acre cap for associations.
Oh, wait, what need input? The group needs input in regards to direct sales for cultivators. What are everyone's thoughts there? We can put this in a letter form. Does anyone have it? We need something.
Yeah, I think that there are 2, this is Hannah, I think that there are 2 in particular issues. One, I think may encounter a more lengthy process at the local level later, but we need to start with the state, and that is involving bud and breakfast and whatnot as well. But again, that implies some local issues, so I'm not pretending that it will all be fixed if we change the situation at the state level, but I think that's one course. And then, of course, farmers markets, and then the issue came up as to whether or not to advocate for, at cannabis events, not having to go through distributors, but being able to have direct sales at cannabis events. So those are all really different contexts and where sales might occur. And then, of course, there is the issue of if you do have a micro business and you are only qualifying under distributor transporter and not full distributor, is there a pathway for direct sales at your own premises or whatever? So I think that those are maybe 4 of the issues that I can identify. I'm not saying that they are not fraught with implicating local issues as well that would have to be worked out, but just separating it out for the state, those are, I think, the advocacy points that I can identify. I'm sure there might be more.
So, just a comment, because I was up there when they did the distribution thing, lobbying, that the limited distribution, and Keith, you might know more about this, the intent was to be direct sales, originally.
No, the micro-business was, but not.
Yeah.
The history of the distributor transporter was that the Safety Act had the transportation license.
All I know
The
is
Adult Use Act did not
I was
when
at
they
the
merged
table when
them.
they were talking about it, and so that's what I'm trying to tell you. Is at the table at the Capitol with the 8 people that were in the room, that's what the intent was. So I'm just giving you that information. It's just FYI.
See that we're talking about this, but I'm proposing we pick up discussing this at the later end, just because we do have Mary Lynn and Matt here, and I want to make sure we do local issues.
That's true.
Because we're going to try to get this to the planning commission soon, so maybe we go to local issues and talk about, I think the biggest one I think is, well, what's coming up is micro-business. And the comb, cottage, processing, manufacturing thing, so 1 and 3 are coming up fairly soon, so I would suggest maybe we start with those, just so we make sure staff gets input as we start doing this.
Yeah.
If we have time, we'll come back to additional comments. So
Let's start with great.
So what is it that we need? We need,
Zoning.
we need zoning question, but don't we need an ordinance amendment?
can we do a little recap of what came out of the last meeting for micro-business direction and home occupation/cottage direction? And then we'll go from there.
I think it was pretty broad direction, because we recommended it ourselves. We've always had the idea that we needed to do more with micro-business, so I don't know exactly how we end up doing it. I know we're going to add in more of the state terms, because I think that's part of the problem we look at from the zoning, I'm going to let Mary Lynn elaborate, but the issue of, full distribution on a dirt road, so if we can use better terminology that the state's recognizing, then we can look at that and say, okay, if you are 4 miles up a dirt road, you can do your transport only, there may be limited types of distribution given with the zoning or site characteristics. Same with the issue of retail at storefront versus,
Non-storefront.
That's the one. That could be your 4th prong if you're not not expecting sales, again, trudging up even county dirt roads that aren't that great. So that's what we're looking at bringing forward. I'm not sure if it'll end up being specific zones that we were laying out, or if it'll end up being an overall clause for admin permit. We'll see if we get more detailed on what we lay out specifically in the ordinance on what zones, and if you're in rangeland and you meet certain qualifiers, then this could be your micro-business type. The issue is how much work we can put into that now versus how much work we want to put on the back end. People do want to have more specific review. So that's the overall proposal.
So my thing is, give me some examples of what you picture micro-business being. So, and I'm going to say rangeland, and you're on a private road. So what do you see happening?
Cultivation site with limited manufacturing and the ability to distribute, or cultivation site with distribution and the ability to run a dispensary retail via delivery service would be a couple of ideas.
So,
lots of different
on a private road, dirt road, you're 10 miles out, you're 1 mile out. And I'll just look at it from a planning perspective, and I think you heard it from the planning commission today. They're concerned about the private roads and the use of the private roads, especially for commercial activity, or if you have customers running in and out of there. So when you say retail,
thinking more retail in terms of delivery service, non-storefront delivery. So not having customers come, but being able to deliver retail.
Are we good that we don't see customers coming to the site too?
Yes.
But I'm actually RR, and I'm not on a dirt road. I'm actually right off the highway on my property, and I have a fabulous site for development that I'm looking at putting commercial buildings on, and I'm working with outdoor consultants for the planning and hiring a civil engineer. And for me, I see it as long-term flexibility for land use. for micro business, I would like to be able to start with the distribution and potentially sales, but more on the cottage industry side, where I don't want 1 million people, even though they're driving on a paved road to get to my property. The dirt road is 50 feet to get to those gates. I'd like to be able to use my property as a cottage industry where if I had 10 people coming on, they could leave with something, but not as a storefront, not as a roadside fruit stand either.
So what you're talking about, I see, is like a cottage industry.
But it would require a micro business permit because I'd be engaging in multi-phase.
So a cottage industry would most likely require, and I'm not sure if it's administrative or use permit. So it'll put you through a kind of a hearing process, potentially. And I think of this in a land use issue where, you know, say don't talk just cannabis. I'm not. I'm thinking of, I mean, we had somebody that was doing honey. You know, they had a honey production going on. You know, they went through a use permit process. I mean, it happened on all levels. Or somebody, you know, manufacturing sewing or quilting or something, you know, depending on depending on levels. But so that's what I want to know. Is that, you know, I want to hear exactly what it is that you see it. What's the big picture?
I have a 10-year game plan,
Okay.
which starts with the gardens. I've already been approved by my state. I have my state temporary license. Once I get my fish and game through, I will have my full application. I would like to be able to apply for a county permit. Like here, if I were to apply at this time because of the zoning on my property, I actually don't think I could apply for a micro business permit.
No, because it's
RR5.
yeah.
And so there we have a perfect property, which everyone who comes to the property goes, oh my God, this is perfect. Outside of town, you're away from school. My neighbor has nothing but huge firefighting equipment on his property. It doesn't invade other people.
How many acres do you have?
7 3/4. I've got, because it was a mill site, I had hard-packed soil.
That's part of it.
I have all of these things. The impact's already done. Everything's already generated. It's got cow transport.
All right.
It's got everything is done.
Right. So that's one type. So
And I'd like to go to bed and breakfast all the way.
This is Julia with this one. She's right on 101.
all right. No, I get that.
Well, but most people in her situation are not.
Right.
So there's
Right.
going down a dirt road saying you might want to qualify it out.
Well, I just want to say, you know, is it a private road? Is it a public road?
It's a public.
It's a public road. But you have to see that we have to try to cover every base, probably with one regulation.
Yeah.
Right.
So there might be categories of
So-
microbusiness.
That's what I'm thinking.
So categories or use permits would be required, and with the use permit, then we can put conditions on, you may have to do something with your road, or you
Isn't it like a 1-year process for a use permit?
6 to 12 months.
That's huge for people.
Of course
yeah.
it's huge.
Well, I heard John McCowan saying, can we reduce that
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
to an administrative permit?
Because with
Yeah.
that said,
Yeah.
then we have to start looking at CEQA. And we've got to make sure it falls into that. If we do a use permit, we get to address CEQA right there.
But this permit also sinks a lot of businesses that they won't be alive in 6 to 12 months.
But that's the business world, dude. We do it with all, like I said, we did it with the guy doing this honey production. He's a one-man operation, but if he wanted a certain size, he was down a private road, he had to go through a use permit process. It took him 6 months.
Those are private.
I get that, I understand that. But I'm just saying that we've got to look at all the different types of, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear what's out there. So I understand, I get your picture.
But I still don't even have the use permit start.
Right.
So
I understand that.
on the chart.
We need to not be focusing on case specifically.
That's right.
Especially sitting here, because you're looking to have a global community input. I get it, it's one day, but what they're here to hear is what can we talk about that's not so specific.
Yeah, I think she needs to.
But I need to hear some of this, I need to hear that, but when we're taking all that into consideration, it's a bigger picture, so we can't focus just on one.
I understand.
Forest land, this is Monique, and I'm off the county road, and what I would envision for a micro business would be cultivation as the primary use, and then light manufacturing, and being able to do non-retail. And if we could do it through farmers markets and that would count, that would be awesome, something like that.
So this is Jude, and my microbusiness vision is to have my medicinal retail coupled with non-volatile, very small, light manufacturing to make medicines that are custom-made for patient needs in conjunction with a distribution transport only, so we can move our medicine from source to provider. And I question, what about the possibility, I'm trying to, it just seems like to leap all the way to a use permit, and if you don't have a use permit, then you're stuck with CEQA. It seems like there's something in between. I mean, can we do a program or project-specific EIR that is a subset of CEQA that's not so onerous? Is that a possibility?
Either, when we're designing this, you either can do a ministerial permit, which was the goal with the cultivation permit, and that required more CEQA up front. With the idea that there's not site-specific CEQA for anything that is in there as a ministerial action, just letting clearance. If we're doing something that allows or requires use permits later, we can actually do less CEQA right now. There's an exemption in state law for that that's really intriguing for the next year and a half. But
say that again, we could do less CEQA?
So if you allow
I have a question.
Hold on.
allowing for more individualized review and CEQA on each use permit going down the line, then you can say, I will be studying all those individual site-specific effects later. So you get less work now. In Mount Cursa, there is even a CEQA exemption for ordinances that involve, that require future discretionary review. So that would mean almost that we none right now, but definitely later for sure.
But then can we get a provisional permit so that we can proceed while that's going on? That's the next question.
That's kind of, could we look at what we have right now for temporary licenses for the facilities, and could it be modified if we went down a longer process for microbusiness?
I'll give you 1 second point.
Okay.
In terms of whatever we have right now, we adopted the facilities ordinance based on a CEQA exemption. So right now, if we're going forward with that, ideally, whatever we're describing, we'll send an exemption as well. So we'll have to see what that looks like and if it would require more review or not. So that's all analysis we haven't. We'll try and do some more of that in the next few days. But that's the main question is what we can do for the next step. If it does require more CEQA review right now, that will just take longer to get that done. If it requires more CEQA review later in terms of the use permit process or like a minor or major or even an admin permit, then potentially there's less of it right now. But that gives the county the ability to have discretion on those future permits.
And could you address?
This is Paul.
Wait. Paul, is that you?
Yes. Okay, vision of a microbusiness is, again, very much similar to what you're doing. I would be cultivating, then light manufacturing and packaging, distribution in order to take things down to and mainly relationships that I have with different medical dispensaries, retail for the off chance that I might have to deliver a special thing to someone else, them directly instead of going through the dispensary, where it's a specialty custom-made medicine for that particular patient. I would like to see, first of all, it could be a part of the community and help with the distribution for another cultivator and take their products down to act as a distributor for them. But with regards to CEQA, it seems to me, in fact, I know that the state put out their CEQA document, and for microbusinesses, they said that it was less than significant impact. And I don't see why we can't either piggyback or take that language for the that was developed for the entire state and apply it to Mendocino County since it's part of the state. And why a big deal, and why can't we do that?
This is Ron.
Ron, go ahead.
I've only had a little bit of time to look at that document. I saw in the sections I'm looking at a lot of discussion of underlying local ordinances that were supposed to take care of those problems. So if that's there, that means get away with something because they're able to say, oh, the locals will have ordinances. Look at these examples. See, they're taking care of these problems, so we can say it's less insignificant. They have more of a global perspective on that, and I don't think the county has the same ability.
Question?
There was a article that Casey submitted with the at the Planning Commission this morning about CEQA cannabis that was comprised by San Mateo County about how the state really has done this. If we can pull up that, because they're saying that we really have to keep going back and redoing the CEQA because the state has done a lot of that already.
Also, the state is also, like Matt said, this is done, relying on the counties to have those in place themselves.
Casey, did you send a letter?
That's been critical for the
I
state.
sent one yesterday and then a backup this morning.
So one, Julia.
Julia had charged it.
I can forward it to you.
Okay, I'll get it.
Julia?
So my comment on micro-business land use is that every small farmer that I come in contact with is about to go out of business or is going out of business. And there are 700 farmers, according to Jason Fenton, that have properties on market. If they could do a micro-business. So I know that most of my clients want to do a micro-business can't because of zoning or some restriction, no matter where they are. And what people are saying about their micro-businesses is true, but really, this is lifesaver for these small farmers that I consider to be cottage industry, nursery, and other things like that. So whatever we can do, because I know the board's intent is to protect small farmers, whatever leniency you can give, whatever doors or small little windows they can open is going to be hugely beneficial.
What does that micro-business look like, William, for you?
Well, it's broad. So, number one, it can be on rural residential at a certain acreage limit, 5. If we can get into that realm someday. That zoning is pretty much anywhere that you can cultivate. Everybody is doing cultivation in a micro.
Manufacturing, is that the
And distribution.
Well, the distribution, we allow that as accessory.
I think, and this is where, sorry to cut you off. This is where I think the issue is between where we were coming at last year versus where the state's coming at now. Where we came at with what manufacturing was, if it was an level 1 accessory to cultivation, that was fine. And for distribution, our main concern was actual warehouse facilities with fleet operations and lots of things going in and out. The state has divvied it up more specifically.
Right.
They want to see that, from what I'm getting, they want to see more of that from us. So I think we would look at these issues and say, you can do cultivation and you can move on product and you can do all these things. The state's saying, we have permit types for that. County, follow us. So that's what I think the issue we're looking at for our ordinances. That's why the main thing is, okay, state will follow you. We had less there because we had more things based on if you're accessory cultivation, that's fine. Distribution, if warehouse, we care. If not, you can do product because if you're someone someone baking in your own home kitchen, you can take it to whoever's buying your baked goods. So that was where we came from. It's different now, based on the regulations in Mount Cursa, apparently how the state's doing that. That's what we're getting to for now. The state broadens out, so be it. If to make everyone's life easier, we're looking at to make ours more specific and tailored so the state's not asking questions about, well, why doesn't the local government
And then you can process at this like small level, I'm going to use home word here, or some of this light manufacturing. I think here it's getting the examples of what do these companies look like so we can get it right in a way.
Anna, sorry. Okay. A couple of things. First off, I think another thing I don't want to lose sight of in terms of a possible future activity, and again, I know it will take more work, but I know that a lot of people are interested in kind of this tourism, and so what that means on-site tasting rooms, or if it means bed and breakfast or whatever, and I recognize that that also involves environmental health and that that's a whole other thing, but I just wanted to let you know that I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, and particularly people who already have inns and licenses for those kind of underlying activities, just want to do the cannabis overlay. Additionally, I want to say that we should distinguish, the language I think that we should distinguish is there's a difference between transport only, self-distribution, and distribution for others. And I think that if we can keep those categories maybe sorted a little bit, where you're distributor transport only, you're not doing necessarily the end sales directly. I mean, hopefully you'll be able to at some point when we get all this other stuff done, but it's more of a transportation license. They just have to stick it underneath the distribution. But then the whole reason for the micro-business at the state level was so that farmers could do self-distribution and not have to go through these other facilities. That's really different than having a fleet and having a big warehouse.
Oh, we get that. Yeah.
And then other people in neighborhoods who go, well, wait a minute, rather than have all these individuals, maybe there is an appropriate property in the neighborhood that should have a facility, a packing and processing facility, and get a distribution license, but it still doesn't necessarily mean a fleet of vehicles or whatever. And so I recognize that you guys have to sort out the different uses, but I think that it might be valuable to sort out the categories and make it as clear as possible for the individual who's applying to go, okay, I'm in this little subcategory, and these are the rules.
I think that's the idea about the mixed strain, that's specifically in the meeting, is actually matching the state on distribution and matching their categories. So we're getting more specific on exactly what you're saying,
right.
Designating the self-distribution, transport only, so getting more into the weeds, because our definition now is very broad.
I think even at the state level, we're looking, because we have the overlay at the local level of having to pay attention to our zoning codes, I think that we might even have more subcategories than maybe what the state wants to have. And I just want to pose that as a potentiality, that it might help sort out the different levels of what's needed, whether you just need an administrative permit, a full use permit. But I do really want to get back to the issue of the temporary permission at some point, because to see how a review, an administrative review of some sort, a discretionary review of some sort, would be applicable in a lot of situations for microbusiness. But there needs to be an avenue that people are going to be able to hang in there. And I know that it's a tricky legal thing that you're grappling with. I just would like to see that calendared, maybe while we're working on these larger issues, first tackle that, because if we can get some kind of a temporary way for people to be temporarily authorized at their own risk, as the board said, that they know that if it doesn't work, it's not going to work, and that they may have invested their money for nothing. That would then cover this gap time period where people have to hang in there, and therefore the work, because I know that it's a lot of work to figure it out. If we can concentrate on that first while launching into these larger issues, I think that might be helpful.
Okay, so I know there's questions in the back. Did you have any? I mean, I don't know.
I think I've discussed the issue of temporary permits in front of the board and a lot of those things, and I haven't found a way to overcome all of my concerns on that in terms of whether or not that at your own risk is really something that it would actually protect the county in the future from someone saying, no, I have a permit. I invested money on all these things. I'm vested. So I think there's still concerns over that. I think the state's in a position.
The federal can come in at any time.
Okay, well, that's not.
There's a risk already.
Well, that's not on my. I'm thinking about the laws from the growers against the county.
And you don't believe that you could do an effective waiver, a written waiver, that would very specifically waive that ability? I think that that's possible.
I'm not sure that's fair, to be honest. My concern is, the issue of, Potentially one, and also there's two issues. One is the vesting issue.
Sure.
And the second issue is, how do you say we're going to allow someone to do a project that we think would be a discretionary permit in the end and not do so with CEQA? I think that's just an open door for a potential lawsuit. Anyone that is not happy with that kind of development, I can't say how we're complying with CEQA and that ordinance because we're not. We're saying there's a project that would be a clearly discretionary permit that they can start working on, invest their money on, and be open and operating, not just without that permit, but without any environmental review for that permit.
The direction, too, is that we bring this back as soon as possible. So we're on a tight timeline from the board of what they expect to bring.
And let me just sort of finish my thought process on that. If there's a way we can continue the system we have now, if the state is okay with, if someone has applied for that permit at the county level, then that's probably sufficient. I mean, but in terms of us saying, here is an actual document saying you're fine,
No,
I think there might be some middle ground, and
There
that's
is a way, that's because, well, and
So hang on, we can't go back and forth and argue. So,
local authorization is okay. That's not just.
all right.
so, we had a question in the back.
Yeah.
Part of the thing for the microbusiness and manufacturing is that now they only have type 6 and type 7, and that throws a whole lot of things that are type 6 that are very different from each other. And so people are talking about light manufacturing. If they're talking about ice water hash or rosin or a product that should be under a home occupation, easy under a microbusiness. But if they're talking about doing massive distillate, which is also illegal under type 6, that's probably something that you really wouldn't be an accessory to using your grow. So if we possibly put in, these are what we consider accessories to use your grow. Rosin, ice hash, a few other processes, and then those could be specifically part of a microbusiness that wouldn't have to do everything that a type 6 non-manufacturer has to do. You know, that could possibly help there.
We have a type 1 and a type 2, and I think the goal was to essentially break it down like that. If I'm right, only the type 1s, but that's either up to a volatile using a non-volatile method, everything up to that would be allowed for your microbusiness. That's your accessory manufacturer.
But it's accessory not just to cultivation, but to retail as well.
Right now, all it's discussed is accessory to cultivation.
Well, but
What you want,
but a lot more than me. I mean, yeah, okay.
I would definitely like to explore this idea of ancillary uses. I think that goes with the accessory uses. I think that goes with the initial spirit and intent behind the micro-business license, and it has become hopelessly complicated by the bifurcated state agency situation. So a strong statement from a county like Mendocino, who has only small cultivators, consider these activities to be accessory to our cultivation license, could go a long way. There's, for instance, Nevada County is organized and working on coming online and is expected to also be a small cultivation county. There's a number of counties that are looking at coming online in a very small scale proportion, but it's going to be very, very difficult for those operators, for instance, to seek multiple licenses under a micro business. So if we could make a concerted push to the state to allow these as accessory uses, I think, that's something that I would go out and beat the drum on all day.
Agreed.
Hear, hear.
I was just considering the difference between those of us in the quote tier 1 phase of the cultivation ordinance being different from the folks who may come in subsequent to that. And because we've been inspected and assessed and visited and all those things, if there isn't a faster track for those of us who've already been evaluated up one side and down the other, and if you don't think that, based on the knowledge that you have of us, that we might have a faster track to micro-business.
So I guess what I've heard up till now is the issue with micro businesses is that really we're just not jiving with the state, because we would already allow, if you want a manufacturing permit accessory to your cultivation permit, you can apply for that manufacturing permit. So
that's why the micro business permit
and so that's something we didn't understand at first. I think Jude has explained it to me now that, you know, every permit's a different cost at the state level, and the micro business is one fee.
Right.
So that's a
So
huge thing.
our ordinance doesn't cover that kind of micro business in that light. That's what we're trying to fix.
Trying to fix.
So that there's a micro business.
It may be, and thank you, yes. Maybe we can consider the Tier 1 folks differently than the Tier 3.
Phase one.
Phase one.
Phase.
As far as micro-business or across the board?
Well, I think across the board, but specifically to this conversation about micro.
I'm not sure the phase 3 doesn't exist until 2020, so I'm not sure that, and I don't think there's a difference in speeding up the schedule on that basis.
Well, all I'm saying is that I think that what the state is trying to do is to move, you know, unilaterally, and maybe at the county level, we don't need to do that quite the same way.
Don't think the big picture. Don't think the big picture is done.
Well,
I just don't think that I don't see a speed difference. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring to the board, it would be micro business across the board. We wouldn't be dividing that into phases. It would be looking at, here's your micro business. So I'm not sure that changes anything.
It's not needed.
Correct.
Right.
I don't think it changes anything.
no, but, I mean, there's so much invested in proof of prior and all this stuff about how we got to be where we are that I think it's worth something. I really do, and if there's a way to be a little more flexible, please consider that.
Yeah, I just wanted to support I know a number of resort beekeepers and been on the Lodging Association board for 10 years. Worked with tourism development. So this micro business thing is essential marketing for this product in this county. Absolutely, because this is not going to be an easy industry like some of the board of supervisors think for all. This is going to be a tough, competitive market, just like wine. Just like our grapes are going to Napa bottles. We have an opportunity, and the county is in the way. They continue to wiping people out, it's dirty people, I see it really clearly. And we need to get out of the way and start to look at a business plan and a marketing plan for the county. It's going to work for the future. Because where we are now, with the threshold, we could cause a lot of damage to economic development in the county. Because tourism development is community-related cannabis. It is, just like it is wine. Wine plays with the current. I was chairman of the county tourism promotional board. I'm telling you, I really have seen them. I've seen wine grape programs. I mean, why are our grapes going outside the county? It's going to happen here. And this county is way in the way. It would be much worse if you think, get out of the way and let some of this move forward.
What are your specific suggestions?
Do you have a suggestion?
Yes, micro business really needs to move forward. It needs to get out of the way, and there's no any problem.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I have a real quick question. On this, everyone has an interest in bed and breakfast and tasting rooms. The state is already allowing adult use retail to have tasting rooms. And just a point of clarification, I heard, I think it was John McCowan, somebody from the board, I think there was some direction from the board saying that this isn't even an issue we need to create any county policy around because these are private properties. In a hotel or a motel, if the owner of that facility wants to allow bud tasting, that's not even a matter. Is that accurate or not?
No, because of environmental health.
We have the same smoking restrictions as cigarettes, is the way it was stated.
I think that, what I recall, I think that he said that.
Yeah.
In a prior meeting, Trey Strickland, head of environmental health, and even before him, Dave Jensen, were asking to have input and participation in crafting on-site consumption rules.
I would say no, because that came out when we were talking about on-site consumption. The conclusion was, and was written in the ordinance, that the state allows on-site consumption of retail go that way. Just make sure you update all the smoking rules or any rules by the state. And that we wanted to stay out of it, completely stay out of it, because environmental health is not regulating anything with cannabis. The state's doing it. So I don't see.
You're understanding then that currently that would be an allowable use at a place that's already permitted as an inn or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, land use plan.
in terms of being able to do that on-site, or someone selling it for on-site? They would need a retail license, that's my only concern is, but.
They would need a retail license.
If they're offering it as part of their bed and breakfast, there's rules, it's like wine tasting that they have, they. Yeah, I just use the loophole.
Right. In Stuart's case, and he's not getting a separate retail license, he's just including it as a little butt on the bed. That's right.
So, just something to think about, in Barcelona and other places out of this country, they have cannabis clubs, not like what we know, where you're not only consuming cannabis, you're consuming alcohol, cigars, massages, you know, beautiful meals, some made with cannabis, some not, and it's a destination point for some people. Other people, it's just a club and they're a member of it. So I really want to bring this forward, because I have people asking me about it. People in other countries that have invested here that want to go there. So something to think in the future in regards to the bed and breakfast. It's not just limited to a bed and breakfast.
And I would say we can cross that bridge when the state says we can mix marijuana with other things. And because I think it's less of an issue for us, because they're, like, alcohol is heavily regulated. You get your alcohol license and you get your tobacco license. So if the state's going to mix and match, it's a little easier for us because that's not really our domain. And so if the state sanctions, if you always...
And I would say right now, like, even with an ABC license, I mean, in certain things, you have to, and we're doing a use permit right now that they want to add tasting to an event center. So, you know, there's stuff, but for the most part, it should just be part of your...
Right, I hate to say it, but just 2 days ago, I got a forwarded email from ABC just ruled, don't mix the alcohol with...
Coffee shops.
We have a lot of topics and an hour. So if you want to continue on this, you're never going to finish.
Okay.
I don't want to stifle it if this is something you still need to vet out.
I'd just like a recap, this is Corinne, I'd just like a recap from staff as to what they think they can take forward from our... Zoning is still the big issue.
Zoning is the big issue.
And so what can we do about that?
Well, that's what we're going to take, nothing we can do here, but that's what we're going to take a look at when we...
Send it out to us.
If anywhere cultivation can occur is where there should be microbiome.
I think that's where our starting point is going to look at. We already have 2 of the 4 prongs in areas.
Right.
The cultivation site, manufacturing as an accessory, whether either cottage or home occupation, that brings those 2 together. The issue then is how to bring in the other aspects of that to make sure that the state then says, oh, you're really a microbusiness, even though we hadn't specified it. Distribution transport only, that wasn't a problem for us before. Now the state wants to see us issuing that gets you your 3rd prong. So we're going to try and formalize that as part of this ordinance, and then we'll see if there's any other zoning issues to talk about. But again, the starting point was already cultivation was with manufacturing as an accessory. And so on that, we'll see what else we can reasonably deal with in terms of doing this just as a zoning clearance versus any kind of further permit.
And do we have a time frame? I hate to ask that question. I understand.
So right now, based on the section from the 23rd, today range line expansion, the planning commission.
Great.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That was a good day.
Right, then we've targeted a lot of the things that came out of the board will have to go to planning commission. Yes. So there's zoning ordinance changes or touch on things we at least want to address as part of a CEQA addendum. That we're looking at March 15th as a target date.
Great, but it was a long list, so some things may make it and some may not.
Ideally, most of those things aren't a huge issue in the addendum, but again, the purpose of an addendum is to make things more secure going forward.
The addendum to the CEQA.
Correct. So that's March 15th as a target date, something that may get split out to go ahead of that, if possible, are changes related to Williamson Act,
right,
the exceptions, and probably having to do one more tweak to that in the policies and procedures as well.
So you're
that may go
possibly at the March 15th Planning Commission, or are you going to the board first and then...
No, the March 15th Planning Commission for most changes. Williamson Act changes might be something we could try and do at the March 1st meeting.
Right.
That's a bit of a push.
Right.
Because we still have to draft all these things and get them done. Our time frames per publication would be 10 days in advance of the meeting, so you can't do that the day before.
Is there anything that we can do to assist you all?
Well, you gave us a lot of good information
Okay,
today.
if there's anything that you can think of in the meantime, because we recognize how much work it is, and I also know and acknowledge, of course, the stuff that we can't do for you, but if there is any information or things that we can be helpful in streamlining what you have to grab together, please let us know, because that's why we're in this work.
Yeah, you can definitely crowdsource the group by email.
Yeah, when do you normally, it's 10 days before, right, planning commission?
March 5th.
So, we get them on and we talk about this at March 1st.
And like I said,
If you have any.
we want to leave them alone to do their work, but we want to offer help if there's anything that we can be helpful.
Bingo.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So those are the micro businesses, and we talked about on-line consumption. I think our planning on moving forward with the right, we're looking at that.
Talk about that just briefly, though, because
Not counting immature plants and square footage.
We like that one.
number 5. So I'd like to talk about that only because at the last board meeting, the board did indicate that it was interested in doing that, but then Matt raised some concerns about the CEQA issues again, and I want to encourage you to understand that statewide CEQA took into account that the state doesn't count immature plants. And I understand that there's a difference between our CEQA review and not. And this is where, again, I want to offer, and I've already kind of asked people out in the cultivation community to try and pull together data and information that might be helpful for you to understand that if there is any impact, it's insignificant, but that in many cases there is no impact because a lot of people, what they do literally is they have an area where they had their plants and then it's done and it's moved over here. There might be an overlap of a short period of time sometimes, and that's why not counting it was helpful, but also just to try and get everything synchronized between local and state where we could, so there's less confusion. But I think that if you could identify after you take a back look at the speaking document, if there are issues of particular concern, and then me an email or all of us an email or whatever, then we could try and gather the data that might help inform that one way or the other, and that's what I was thinking as a way to proceed on that.
I guess my thinking, Diane, and maybe Casey, you can speak to this, is so if we have immature plants over here, and we're not counting that as square footage. So, conceivably, if you have a 5,000 square foot operation, what would your immature plant need be?
Case by case. For instance, if I'm doing seed stock full season outdoors, then I don't have any immature plants.
Right.
If I'm doing depth, it depends on what my rotation is. I could have conceivably 5,000 square feet of immature and just be ready to pop them in and have them really
Matt
big.
and I were talking about.
Conceivably. Also conceivably, I could have a few hundred square feet. I think it's going to vary widely across the dynamic because there are so many different styles of cultivation.
And how many permits they have?
Well, they're being streamlined into one.
And the other side for the outdoor conventional grower is that, and if they are starting their own seed stock, they are starting many seeds.
Right.
And they may need a little more room for the many seeds before they choose the plant to maturity.
And different farmers choose that time differently. Some people wait and some strains show later or earlier. So, yeah, you're going to see, you should count on 50% the total cultivation site, in my experience, being in veg if you're doing light depth. It depends upon how many square feet they're doing. But more importantly, in my opinion, you should count on that existing on an ongoing basis for the white peppers. They are constantly vegging plants.
But it also might take a different resource. Okay.
I just had a quick comment at the risk of confusing it a little bit. But, I'm not fully educated on this, but I remember hearing something about the track and trace not actually being required to enter a plant into the system until it actually goes into flower. So I don't know if there's some, that's not true?
No, they want you, before you can plant, they want a declaration of planting.
No. Track and trace, your plant tag goes on when it goes into flowering.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't know if there was some connection there, whereas, if your plant's being defined as not, not being in the trace system yet. So,
They go in as a batch, and you can assign 1 to 100 plants per tag for a batch.
But they're still being counted for, so.
But they're not counted in the square footage.
No, but what I'm saying is if our concern is that plants are going to be protected outside of the black market, we're accounting for this.
Yes, that's correct. There's no danger of that. I also just wanted to say that I think it would be helpful to hear from cultivators if the resources and different styles of keeping plants in veg may be different than the ongoing cultivations. I think that if there are differences and lesser impacts, that information should come forward, because it may not be just a 50%, exact same resource. It might be
More or less.
something else.
Yeah, more electricity.
It does seem like an area where a survey to county, to the cannabis that's served, just a few questions on this might yield some very helpful data.
Are we going to be able to talk about transferability at all?
Yeah, we got two more. Are we done with square footage on immature plans?
Yes.
Would you like to do transferability or temporary permit first?
One more question on the square footage of immature plants. I guess in the location where the immature plants would they still be subject to the same requirements as far as like ag exempt or in the cultivation area?
Yes.
So it would still be okay, but not counted towards this.
Yes. We're going to have to follow all other rules.
What about zoning? Are we going to talk about zoning?
For
We're on transferability.
Okay.
For zoning for what?
Well,
I think we covered the micro business.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about, related but not exactly to immature plants? This is Stansbury. We recently got a clarification, a better interpretation of what the canopy actually is with a definable space. So if you could put just a fence or your cage around your plant, that's considered a definable space, and so you're back to having pi r square and the drip line of the plant as being the canopy for outdoor cultivation. However, they did not change was the 25 plant for small cottage. It's still set at 25 plants instead of 2,500 square feet. And so the square footage needs to be adjusted as they adjusted their interpretation. So that's at a state level, and I'm sorry if I'm talking out of turn, but they're never...
I think that's a good point, and I think we should stick that in the letter to make sure we get clarity on cottage and specialty.
Yeah. That's what we should work out.
And I guess is they're going to come back offering clarity of, it's only 25 plants, so we should push for
Square footage. I agree.
That's real important.
And plant canopy of 25.
Well, just to follow up on that, when I did ask that question, I can't remember who answered it, but they said that they interpreted the regulation and just so that it was a better interpretation, so that you did get that thing. But the 25 plant was a legislative thing. That was in the statute, and that needs to be changed. Now, a lot of that, so I'm not sure how true that is.
So, important, noted, added to the list for the comment letter. Moving on to number 2, transferability of permits.
So, I'd like to start this one out, because I'm out there, and property values, because there's no transferability, go from $825,000 to $325,000. So we need to change that, because I don't even think it's legal, but I'm not an attorney, you and Anna are. So with that said, transferability, the intent was to not get new sites. I get that. Originally, all the restrictions around transferability, but what's happening is that you're strangling the real estate market. And you're strangling again the small farmer who can get enough money if they sell their property, which they can't even sell because they've already got a permit on it. And so it has to be sold as a regular house instead of approved upon, valued added, taxes increase, $1 square foot hoop house situation.
Yeah, this is Ron.
It's really, couldn't we just come up with a definition of when transferability isn't allowed? The transferability isn't allowed, and let transferability happen. That is my request. Let's define when transferability isn't allowed, and let everybody transfer.
I have a potential compromise solution, and I have written this to the board. I have talked to them in the face. McGowan thinks I'm a horrible person because I keep bringing this up. But if we eliminate the clause that says if you transfer or sell your property to a non-family member, that your permit and permittability on that parcel is extinguished. If we eliminate the extinguish clause, then we can work with transferring, selling. Property has been developed for cannabis production, and the new owner has the right to come in, reapply annually just like the current owner does, and be held to the same compliance regulation. If we just stop this business about you must extinguish the ability to grow there and you have to have a deed restriction and this nonsense, we've eliminated the problem for property value and for the ability to believe as a cultivator that if you your property, you will get some kind of return if and when you sell it.
Is the land use?
Wait. Ron, next.
Okay.
Marvin, do you have that?
I think this is a double whammy because not only are you investing money into the cultivation site, but if I remember in the ordinance, if you leave or extinguish the site, you have to restore the garden back to the original state. So not only have you lost the money in putting it into the construction, but now you've got to deconstruct.
Keep going, sorry.
Yeah, it was just about that, you've invested money to build this business, and then if you leave it and can't transfer it, if I remember in the ordinance, you have to deconstruct your garden site. So again, you've reduced your value even more.
The owner has to sign off saying no one will ever grow there again.
Crazy.
Okay, next is Marvin.
I don't think it's enough just to take those couple of clauses out of the ordinance, because, I got to look at the situation of, let's say you've got a partner on it who's a small percentage, but they are bringing investment capital in. Well, if they may be able to directly transfer the business if you can't come up with the money to do that. So we have to make it into a transfer that can go straight from one person to another. Obviously, there's got to be some conditions under which that occurs. It's like the last time when I brought this up, everybody really agreed on this transferability thing. This doesn't seem to be anybody.
Oh, no, McCowan does not.
Stuart is next. Then Mo, then Hannah.
I want to make two suggestions. One is I think that the term transferability of permits is a little bit short, and maybe if I want to call it something else, just from a PR point of view, like flexibility of permit ownership, because transferability is so permanent and so one-sided. And so, just one suggestion, I think that this is extremely important to be consistent with typical business plans. It's literally impossible to go to an investor and say, I want to improve my property if there's no guarantee that the property can be used for the purpose you're borrowing the money for. And the second thing that I think is very important issue is acknowledgement of the vetting of the land. There's much more vetting of the land than there is for the person who actually gets the permit. And I do think there should be some type of entitlement for the properties that belong to this process, so that we can have real business plans in this county, because, this is my opinion, if this one issue doesn't change, we're going to fail as a county in this market.
I just want to say that I feel like the reason that we're not getting transferability from the county, the board of supervisors support, or maybe others, is because there's a fear that there's going to be a huge sell-off of land and property, and big investors will come in and scoop them up, and I don't feel that that's really what's going to happen. I suggest that I think when you look at the wording of it, transferability, it's saying you can't transfer the permit. And what we're really asking is, each year when you annually apply, it shouldn't matter who the new person that's applying for that permit on that cultivation site after, the phase one has been extinguished, moving forward. I like to work in compromise, so if there was anything that we could do to get the board to support this, maybe you have to have your permit for so many years, maybe 2 years in this program before then you could transfer it. I don't know, not that that's what I would want, but if there was some sort of compromise. Because in the end, property value will go down in long term, and no one wants to make investments on a business that can't recoup it in a long period of time. I'm doing all of this because I want to stay in this county. I want to survive and do something. But if for some reason I can't make it or it's just not working out, I want to be able to sell and pass it on to somebody else that can. And if I can't do that, I'm stuck on forest land in the middle of nowhere with no money to even relocate to. And we need to look at this as this is amazing. We're in Mendocino County where we, in a rural place, have figured out a way to live sustainably, economically for ourselves on lots of little property all over this county. This is the bread and butter for each parcel, and we should be allowing that to continue to thrive. And if we shut this door, then, we're setting ourselves up in the future for a big disaster. Because if people are going to go through this program and for whatever reason they can't succeed, what are they going to do? We're going to be at the door looking for food stamps because we're going to have no other income. And, people that want to maybe buy my property and retire there, no one's going to do that in the most rural parts of the county with a 2-hour drive to a hospital. Who's going to want that land? We should be embracing transferability as an option, long term. Really, it's actually about protecting the land. And I think the way we're looking at it has just been in the wrong context. So my proposal is we have to come to a compromise. There's some interest involved in keeping this tightly knit down. And I got threatened in a way by our county people during the break at the last board meeting, saying, don't ever bring this word up again. And I think that's totally undemocratic on a million levels. And there were many people that saw that happen to me. And I stood there with my integrity and listened to somebody that's in power tell me, don't ever say transferability again, otherwise I'm not going to make any more movement towards the amendments that you want to have. That's stifling the community's voice. It is.
So I think the other thing is I couldn't think about that, but transferability is, it's on our list. It wasn't a direction given to staff to look at, so we're not doing it at the moment. It sounds like this working group needs to come up with ideas to present to the board, so they will then take a look at it.
And that is true.
Is this Paul?
No. So we use the focus, and we get that. We're not saying that what you're saying isn't something that you need to collectively come up with tangible recommendations to the board. And staff isn't in it, unfortunately, but this group is, and that's why they formed you.
I would just say the same thing. I think maybe this is an opportunity as a group. It's a working group that's charged with doing this, come out with recommendations. It will hold more clout because the board, we want the community to participate. We want the recommendations. So maybe this avenue of bringing real solutions and maybe compromises can change some of the board's minds or enough of the board to make action. We're going to go to Hannah and we're going to go to Denise.
I have a recommendation.
Wait, no, we're going to go Hannah, then Janine, then you, Paul.
Oh, okay. I didn't what the pecking order was.
So I have a practical recommendation and then a effective or practicality recommendation. And the practical recommendation is that I've noticed that the board has a limited bandwidth for dealing with the complicated issues that we have to push forward, and that without making any comment on the importance of dealing with this issue in the long term, I recommend that we take a medium-term approach and not a short-term approach to this issue, and maybe clearly develop these recommendations and thoughtful things. I do believe that it is extremely important. I do not believe that staff has any ability to address it because A, the board did not direct them to, and B, is not, anyway, I just want to support them in that because they're here and we appreciate that they're here, but they're not the ones who are telling us you can't bring up transferability, and that's inappropriate no matter what, and I agree it's inappropriate. But as a pragmatic, without dismissing anybody's importance of this issue, I think that we have a huge plate full of issues that we have a possibility of getting stuff changed soon. I believe with the current composition of the board, we don't have much of a probability of having this issue changed anytime soon. But I do believe that the Planning Commission is potentially more receptive, or at least some of the members are, some of them are not. And I'm just talking purely pragmatic and politically speaking, and so I would encourage us to burners, all the stuff that has been elected by the board for staff to work on, and simultaneously and over the medium term, gather our information and our proposals and hope that we get further along and it's less of a band-aid out of the
So
board.
just real quick to that, so transferability is within the ag regulations, so the Planning Commission probably would not be reviewing this subject.
The Ag Department's in charge of transferability.
Moving out of queue. And, you know, we can go a little over, but we still gotta be out here at 5, okay? So now we're going to Janine, and then we're gonna go to Paul, and then Casey was in the queue, and then back to Paul.
I think it's important to recognize that there is a component of the transferability issue that is immediate, and that is affecting operators' desire to enter into permitting.
Exactly.
And so I want to also recognize that there is a reason, I think, my understanding of the assessment of this board direction around transferability is that what was trying to prevent an impact of outsiders coming in and buying up land. And so one potential consideration I think that Bill brought up as a solution is to attach some kind of time frame to transferability. And if he can achieve that support from the board and communicate that that's coming, I think that would go a long way for bringing more people, willing to study your system.
You mean a time frame for bringing it up?
A time frame like that we're attaching.
Not a year.
Is that kind of tangible recommendation, if I'm being honest with you?
Yeah.
We're bringing something to them that they can actually say yes, no, or maybe, what do we think? You know what I mean? Versus just transferability.
This is Miranda around.
Yeah.
Paul.
Okay, it seems to me that we granted a permit that this is a land use issue. Use doesn't change if the use is granted to the property. Why is it taken away? It's not done with any other. If you have a restaurant in town, it's a restaurant. It's the use. You can change the use. You can apply to change the use and to do something else in the building, but still granted that use as a restaurant, and someone can come in and open another restaurant, and the use stays with the property. The same for the permit for cultivation or a microbusiness for that matter.
So,
No, Casey and you.
so I have kind of a general point to bring up. So number one, I think that's in a land use permit context, like an admin permit or a use permit, that does go with the land. The program was not designed like that. Most things are an ag permit, and it's designed as a one-year license. said, the issue of transferability is a policy decision made by the board. So, I see a lot of eyes in the room turning to Marilyn and myself on ways to deal with that. Aside from the fact that we don't have direction from the board to do that, the decision was made as part of that process during drafting. So I agree that concrete proposals to discuss with the board is probably a good idea, but that's the starting point. I don't have any. That's not something that is linked into a lot of other aspects of the program. That's why, if it was done on its own, I can't think of it there being a real issue. It wasn't discussed as part of the mitigated neg deck. It's not a secret issue.
This is strictly cultivation too.
So what you're telling me is that on one level, we're talking all the way across the board, if it was anything that's not cannabis specific, but in this case, we're talking about it's kind of cannabis specific. So which one is it?
We'll move on. Casey and then Corinne, and we're going to end with Julia, and that will be the last one.
I'd like to take just a brief moment to reflect on the need for differentiation between regulatory affairs and legislative affairs. So the policymakers set the policy, is staff's duty under those policies to carry that out. So it is quite inappropriate for us to lobby staff for changes to policy that have to be handled at the board level. And what I'd like to suggest is a concerted effort by the community to sit down individually with the policymakers. We have one very clear no. There are 4 remaining supervisors, of which we need 3 to vote yes. So it does become incumbent upon us as citizens within this process to sit down with our policymakers, have the conversation. It does, I mean, we've all learned that it's very difficult to do it in 3 minutes at the Board of Supervisors. And so to be able to have in-depth conversations for constituents within the individual districts, I think is going to be very important in this process.
I agree. I echo that, and I heard it from our Ag Commissioner that should be a good pathway for most of us. In one of the meetings when transferability was argued ad nauseum, there were 3 of the 5 supervisors who seemed to be on board that it was a reasonable consideration, and I agree that we need to lobby those 3 for and vote. But I have one more question to Judy, Hamburg, and Krosky. I have a question to the legal people in the room. Is this a takings issue to prevent use property?
I don't believe it's a takings issue, but I do believe that it does have secret implications, and that where there might be difficulty, but I might be wrong. It's not.
We didn't rely on it in terms of the mitigated neg deck.
I guess as a pragmatic matter, I think that a lot of environmental groups believe that even if you didn't rely on it, we're going to have an enormous fight on the issue, and I don't know whether they would be successful or not, but that is something that needs to be prepared for when putting together these proposals.
A key calculation. So massive pushback.
The Mendocino Resource Conservation District doesn't have the same executive director who was leading that march solely.
Ellen's charging pretty hard right now with that 7-page letter today.
Julia?
Yes.
Wait. No, one more minute. Can I interject 1 second? And on this, I mean, I don't think that the board really realized the amount of infrastructure and money that it's taking to get these properties compliant. Not with the county, but I mean, when you think of what you have to do to get compliant with Fish and Wildlife, the water board, that's a huge investment into those properties. Huge. And I mean, I think that yeah.
And we're already at 4:20. Julia, you're up.
Okay, great.
So, 2 things. First of all, I want to be able to do a roundabout as one of the group things so that we can create someone that's going to be our lead in our group and get all the information together. So I want to make sure we have time for that. And then the other thing I want to say is that I'm not interested in lobbying staff. Although I did talk to you about the cottage industry nurseries.
You're always lobbying.
I'm talking about individuals.
We lobby them when whenever we can get them.
But what I'm interested in is changing the transferability, which does exist. You can transfer from one property to another. It already exists.
Relocation.
It's not transferability. Relocation. Okay. So we start with the relocation because it already exists is my recommendation, and move into transferability from that. Hold on a second.
What? Right?
And what I mean by that is, right now, to relocate, it is getting so unbelievably restrictive to the point where the tax land owner has to sign off that no one will ever grow there before, which I don't even know how you can ask that, but I'm not an attorney. So if we're going to do this, respect what everybody's saying, we have to have a calculated step to make to do that. And in my opinion, one of the calculated steps could be discussing the transferability, which you're calling relocation, and move that in.
It's relocation that you're calling transferability.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because I'm hearing, okay, whatever you guys want to call it is fine with me, thrown out. But we need to get this transferability, and I appreciate the lobbying, but as a group, we need to figure out how we're going to get the board to look at it. My recommendation is that we start with this group heard grave concerns about what we're now defining as transferability, and that can't talk anymore?
Okay. It's 4:32, so I'm pulling this in. We're going to recap it here. We're going to go back to state issues. We decided that we're going to have a subgroup made up of Corinne, Jude, Janine, and Casey. Yeah. And they're going to put together the letter, and they're going to get it to us by Monday morning, February 5th, for the state comments. And then we're going to work on a more in-depth letter for March 1st. Moving to local issues, we talked about the micro businesses, the cottage, and the immature plans, and we have that input from the staff, and we're working on those to go to the Planning Commission. Transferability of permits, what I'm hearing is that you may want to do a smaller subgroup to start to develop possible recommendation and choices for the board to consider, and to thoughtfully think out how you want to approach the board with this working group.
I will write that up.
So are we thinking 4 or 5? How do you want how many subgroups? I'm thinking probably no more than 5.
Members.
Yeah, if I want to start working.
No more than 5.
What is the subject?
So we have one subgroup, which is for doing the letter for the local government, and for working on transferability, I'm suggesting no more than 5. So who wants to raise their hand?
Don't get it.
So we have Janine.
Power stand.
Janine, Monique, Anira Stewart.
Great, perfect.
Jen Propaci, can you hear me? This is Jen Propaci, can you hear me? I will be a member on that subcommittee if there is room.
We have 5. Is that 6?
That was
6. How about we have you guys want an alternate?
Yeah.
That sounds good. We're 6. You're on 6.
Yeah.
Jennifer, you're on.
Okay.
And signed up. So, our next agenda, we will, when we meet March 1st, we'll have a follow-up update on the amendments in the works based on our public comment, and we'll have the transferability group and report out on some initial conversations. We'll also have a draft letter that went out on the 6th.
Right.
Am I missing, is there anything else we want on our next?
Are we communicating with everybody in the group if we need to?
We're going to get a full...
Yeah, we're going to get a full email.
Yeah.
You guys said you get it.
Okay.
And with respect to the AM, I'm going to be emailing to Kat
I sent it to her already.
Oh, thank you. So in my memo, to BCC, you'll get a good
So this group is meeting March 1st. Okay, March 1st, all right.
It's really difficult to hear, but I didn't, when you were recapping, did you include for the state issues, 25 plants for the spec cottage outdoor?
So we're going to recap the letter, and I believe that's one of the issues that we're going to capture in the first round of commenting.
Yeah.
So yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Timeline for these meetings being the audio being posted online.
So it'll be early next week, because we have to convert them and then have our IT people get them onto the website.
So could we?
So the pre-ones are going to be up from the opt-in and opt-out?
Yeah, it's only a couple of days.
Opt-in, opt-out are being handled by Pearl. Don't know where they are with that, do we?
We're working on it. We're close to get, yeah.
So Ron, did you hear that about days that they get them up in?
Yeah,
Talking about this, you talked about the opt-in, opt-out.
We'll touch base on that last June.
Is it important to touch on the temporary permits for overlay people, for the
I say yes. Next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a clarification real quick on that. People are not currently being denied. They're in sunset zones. Is that correct?
That is
Okay,
correct.
perfect. That's very important.
All right.
Limbo, we can live with limbo for the time being.
Until next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
And Sarah, great job. And we need to protect Mo and everybody.
You could have been here.
Yeah, it was good. Trying to get it.